Hey guys, welcome to the channel. So Riot just released all of Set 4's new items, champions, traits, everything new. There's this cool cheat sheet that you can use. I will link it in the description down below if you want to go ahead and check it out at the end of the video. So yeah, let's go and look at the new stuff. We got some new traits. This is Set 4. I won't go too much into detail and just explain it real quick. So we have the first trait, which is Cultists. It works for Atrox, Elise, Evelyn, Jhin, Kalista, Pyke, Twisted Fate, and Zillion. So once your team loses 40% of their HP, Galio is summoned, slamming into the largest cluster of enemies and knocking them up. So at 3 cultists, you got Tyrant Galio, 6 you got Demon Lord Galio, 9 you got Supreme Overlord Galio. For the next one, Divine, it works for Aurelia, Jax, Lee Sin, Lux, was this Warwick and Wukong. Upon attacking 6 times or dropping below 50% health, Divine Champions ascend, taking 25% reduced damage and dealing bonus true damage for the rest of the combat. So this makes them a bit tankier and kind of close quarter fighters, which is really cool. Next is Dusk. Dusk Champions increase all allies' spell power. So we have Cassiopeia, Lilia, Riven, Thresh, and Vayne. So at 2, you can increase all allies gain 20% spell power. At 4, all Dusk champions gain an additional 60%, and at 6, 50% for all and 100% additional for Dusk champions. Next is Enlightened. This works for Fiora, Aurelia, Janna, Morgana, Nami, and Talon. Enlightened champions generate more mana, so this is like the ocean trait at set 2, I think. So yeah, they just generate more mana. Next we have Elderwood. It works for Ashe, Azrael, Hecarim, Lulu, Maokai, Nunu, and Veigar. Every 2 seconds, all Elderwood champions grow, gaining bonus stats. This effect stacks up to 5 times, though this is a stacking effect. Next we have Exile. This is a really cool trait. It works for Yasu and Yone. If an Exile has no adjacent allies at the start of combat, they gain shield equal to 50% of their maximum health. And if you have 2 of them, you will gain the shield and an additional 100% lifesteal. Yasuo is a 1 cost, so we'll see how that works. And Yone is the legendary unit, which is 5 cost. Next we have Fortune, and it works for Annie, Jinx, Katarina, Sejuani, and Tamkench. So for Fortune champions, if you have 3, winning combat against a player will give bonus orbs. The longer you've gone without an orb, the bigger the payout. Wins give you an extra bonus orb with rare loot. So this is for comps when you feel like you're comfortable and you can win. You can get at least 3 of these, and you can snowball from there. Next is Moonlight, which works for Aphelios, Diana, Lysandra, and Silas. So if you have 3 of them, at the start of combat, the lowest star level Moonlight champion stars up until combat ends. In the case of a tie, the champion with the most items is chosen. So this is a really cool new trait. Next is Ninja. Ninja is back. It was at set 2, I think, or set 1. So yeah, if you have 1, you get 45 attack damage and spell power. If you have 4, you get 100 attack damage and spell power. Next is Spirit. The first time a spirit casts their shield, all allies gain attack speed based on the spell's mana cost. So this works for Lilia, Kindred, Teemo, and Yumi. Next is Warlord. These are close quarter fighters. It works for Azir, which is a 5 cost champ. He's a legendary unit. Garen, Jarvan, Katarina, Nidalee, Vi, and Xinjiao. Warlords have bonus health and spell power. Each victorious combat they participated in increases this bonus by 10%, stacking up to 5 times. So you want to aim for 5 wins, and these units will grow so big they'll become unstoppable. Next is the boss, which is unique to Set. This is really cool and unique trait, like literally. When the boss first drops below 40% health, he removes himself from combat to start doing sit-ups. Okay, each sit-up restores 50% of his maximum health and gives him 40% attack speed and movement speed. If he reaches full health, he returns to combat bumped up, converting his basic attack and spell damage to true damage. If all of his allies die, he will immediately return to combat. So yeah, Set is obviously a legendary unit. It's gonna be super cool to play with. Next are the Tormented, which is applicable only for Kayn. Tormented can be transformed after participating in 3 combats, enhancing their abilities. So you can go for red form or blue form after participating in fights. Next we have some new types. The first one is Adept, which is for Aurelia, Shen, and Yone. Adept calm the flow of battle, reducing the attack speed of all enemies by 50% for a few seconds at the start of combat. This is really OP. It's like a built-in Frozen Heart, which works like insanely good. Next is Assassins, so Assassins are back. Innate, before combat starts, Assassins leap to the enemy backline. Assassin's spell can critically strike and they gain bonus critical strike damage and chance. So we got Akali back, we got Diana, Katarina, Pike, and who's this? Talon. Next is Brawlers. Brawlers gain bonus maximum health, pretty basic. It works for Maokai, Nunu, Set, Silas, Tam Kench, Vi, and Warwick. Next are Dazzlers. This type is for Cassiopeia, Ezreal, Lissandra, Lux, and Morgana. Dazzler spells reduce the target's attack damage by 50% for a few seconds, so these units weaken the enemy. Next is Duelist. This is pretty popular at the moment in PvE. So this works for Fiora, Jax, Kalista, Lee Sin, Xin Zhao, and Yasuo. Duelists gain bonus movement speed. Duelist attack grant attack speed up to 8 stacks. So it's stacking attacks you like Guinsoo Rageblade. It's a built-in Rageblade for all these units. Next is Hunter. This works for Aphelios, Ashe, Kindred, and Warwick. Every 3 seconds, all Hunters will attack the lowest health enemy, dealing increased damage. Next is Keeper. This is pretty popular. Don't underestimate this because Keeper gives you a stacking shield, like a lot of shields, which you might think like it's not the best bonus, but it's really OP and it stacks a lot. So this works for Azir, which is a legendary unit, Elise, Jarvan, Kennen, and Riven. At the start of combat, Keepers grant themselves and all nearby allies a shield for 8 seconds. This shield is 50% stronger on Keeper, so it's like a walking locket. You can just put them like at the four lines, and you'll have like 3 or 4 lockets on your entire team. Next is Mage. Mage is back, so it works for Ahri, Annie, Lilia, Lulu, Nami, Twisted Fate, and Veigar. Mages cast twice and have modified spell power. So this is the old one, the old set 2 trait, which is really OP. You can stack your Veigar, and at the start of combat, you'll just launch two ults and kill like 2 units. So next is Mystic. Mystic is still the same. All allies gain magic resistance. Now we have 6 of them. So there's these 2, which are Cassiopeia, Janna, Shen, Yuumi, and Zillion. So yeah, at 6 you get 200 magic resistance. Next is Shade. Let's see. This works for Zed, Evelyn, and Kayn. When combat starts, Shades teleport to the enemy backline. Every third attack, Shades dips into the shadow, stealthing and causing their next basic attack to deal bonus magic damage. Next is Sharpshooter. This works for Jhin, Jinx, Nidalee, Teemo, and Vayne. Sharpshooter's attack and spells ricochet to nearby enemies, dealing reduced damage. Next is Vanguard. Vanguard champions gain bonus armor, just like the standard Vanguard. So you got 100, 200, and 500 at 6 Vanguards. Our Vanguards are Aatrox, Garen, Hecarim, Sejuani, Thresh, and Wukong. So next is Emperor. This is unique to Azir. He has a special interaction. Emperors deploy with 2 additional units that can be moved separately. These shield bearers do not move or attack and die when their emperor dies. Next are the new champions. First, we got the one-cost champions. We got Diana, who's a Moonlight Assassin. Her ability is Diana shields herself for a few seconds and summons orbs to orbit around her. These orbs explode, dealing magic damage when they contact an enemy, refreshing her shield when the final one explodes. This is the set to Diana, she's back. Next is Elise, Spider form. Elise transforms into a spider, gaining bonus maximum health and causing her attack to restore health. Next is Fiora. It's the same Fiora, which she has her parry, and she's now a duelist, Enlightened Duelist. Next is Garen, who's a Warlord Vanguard. Garen spins his sword for 4 seconds, reducing incoming damage by 50% and dealing magic damage to nearby enemies over the duration. Next is Lissandra, 1000 daggers. Lissandra hurls a dagger at her target's location, exploding into many daggers on contact with an enemy or when it reaches its destination. The initial dagger deals magic damage, and all enemies hit by the dagger explosion are dealt magic damage. Next is Maokai. He's an Elderwood Brawler. Maokai smashes enemies in front of him, dealing magic damage and slowing their attack speed by 50% for 3 seconds. Next is Nami, who's an Enlightened Mage. Nami traps the closest enemy in a bubble, dealing magic damage and stunning them for a few seconds. Next is Nidalee, who's a Warlord Sharpshooter. Nidalee throws her javelin at the furthest enemy, dealing magic damage plus 25% per hex traveled. Nidalee is now kind of nerfed because she was so strong on PBE. Next is Pike. Pike is now a 2-star, 2 cost. He was a 1 cost. He's a cultist assassin, same Pike from set 2 or 1. I can't remember anymore. Pike dashes and then he dashes the furthest enemy, and he stuns the entire lineup between them. Next is Taamkench, who's a new unit. Taamkench ignores damage from all sources. So he has damage reduction by 15, 25, and 75. He's a really strong tank. He's the new and improved Leona. Next is Twisted Fate, who's a cultist mage. It's the same Twisted Fate, just throws 3 cards. Next is Vayne. Vayne, 3 attacks and then bonus through damage. Next is Wukong, who's a Divine Vanguard. Wukong slams his target with his staff, dealing a percent of his attack damage as physical damage and stunning them for a few seconds. Next is Yasuo, who's an Exile Duelist. You should always aim for Yasuo and Yone combo. It's really strong. Yasuo strikes towards 2 hexes, forward 2 hexes, dealing a percent of his attack damage as physical damage and applying on-hit effects. Next are the 2 costs. We have Annie, who's a Fortune Mage. Annie blasts a cone of fire, so it's the same Annie, just blasts a cone of magic damage to the units in front of her. The next one is Aphelios, who's a Moonlight Hunter, Century Turret. Aphelios summons a turret for a few seconds, an extension of his will. The turret counts as Aphelios himself when it fires and deals damage, and dies when he dies. So Aphelios is the new Jhin as a 2 cost. He's really strong, especially with the Rage Blade and an Infinity Edge, because the auto attacks from the sentries count as his own auto attacks, so it stacks really well. Next is Hecarim, who's an Elderwood Vanguard. Hecarim absorbs health from each adjacent enemy over 2 seconds. Next is Janna, Enlightened Mystic. Janna shields the lowest health allies for 4 seconds. Shielded allies gain attack damage for the duration. Next, then is Jarvan, Warlord Keeper. Jarvan strikes the furthest target with 3 hexes, within 3 hexes, with his spear, and pulls himself towards them, dealing magic damage to units he passes through and knocking them up and stunning them for 2 seconds. So we got a lot of stuns, a lot of CC in this set. Next is Jax, who's a Divine Duelist. Jax dodges all incoming attacks for 2 seconds, then strikes all nearby units. It's the same Jax, just buffed. Next is Lulu, who is an old Elderwood Mage. Lulu makes the low health allied giant, granting them bonus health and knocking up adjacent enemies near them for 1.5 seconds. Next is Silas, who's a Moonlight Brawler. Chain Lash. Silas lashes his chains out in a 3 hex line, dealing magic damage to enemies hit and increasing the cost of the next spell by 40%. Next is Teemo, who's a Spirit Sharpshooter now. Teemo fires a dart at his target that explodes into a cloud spores on contact, poisoning nearby enemies. Poisoned enemies take magic damage over a few seconds and of course are blinded for the duration. So we have a 2.5 second, 3 second, and 5 seconds blind, which is a lot. So I can see this becoming really strong. Next is Thresh, who's a 2 cost Dusk Vanguard. Thresh throws his lantern to the lowest health ally, shielding them and nearby allies against damage for 4 seconds. So this is the old trash. No more pulling new units as a 5 cost. Next is Vi, who's a 2 cost. She's a Warlord Brawler. Vi's attacks blast through her target, dealing magic damage to all enemies in a cone and reducing their armor for 4 seconds. Next is Zed, who's a ninja. Shade. Passive, every third attack Zed deals bonus magic damage and seals a percent of the target's current attack damage. So it's the same Zed, just he's now a ninja and Shade. Next are the 3 costs. We got Akali, who's also a ninja assassin. Akali throws kunai at her target, dealing magic damage. Next is Evelyn. Evelyn deals magic damage to up to 3 nearby units, then teleports away. This is the same Evelyn from the previous set. Next is Aurelia, who is an Enlightened, Divine, and Adept. Adept is really strong trait, so always go for that if you can. Aurelia launches a barrage of blades in front of her, dealing magic damage and applying on-hit effects. Enemies hit are disarmed for a few seconds. Next is Jinx, Force and Sharpshooter. Jinx's next attack fires a rocket, stunning her target. Oh, now she has a stun for 1.5 seconds and dealing magic damage to her target and all adjacent enemies. The next 3 cost is Kalista, who's a cultist duelist. Passive, Kalista's spears remain in her target, each one capable of dealing a percent of the target's max health in true damage when she removes them. Kalista will remove the spears. When doing so, she would kill the target. Next is Katarina, who's a warlord, fortune, and assassin. Katarina channels for 2.5 seconds, throwing knives at nearby enemies, dealing magic damage over the duration and reducing healing for 50% by 50% to her target for 3 seconds. So this is a walking Morello. Next is Kanan, who's the old Kanan ninja keeper. Kanan summons a storm around him, dealing mana for 3 seconds, and stunning enemies inside of it for 1.5 seconds. Next is Kindred, who's a spirit hunter. Wolf molds Kindred target, dealing magic damage and reducing healing by 50% to her target for 5 seconds, while Lamb leaps away from Kindred's target. Next is Lux, who's a divine dazzler. She does the light binding. Lux fires a sphere of darkness towards the farthest enemies in its path. So this is the old Lux in its path. Take magic damage and are stunned for a few seconds. Next is Nunu, who's an Elderwood Brawler. He's got Consume. Willump bites his target, dealing magic damage. If Willump target has less health than him, before the bite, it deals an additional 50% damage and deals true damage instead. Next is Veigar, who's an Elderwood Mage. Veigar blasts the lowest health enemy with a burst of energy, dealing magic damage. If this kills the target, Veigar permanently gains 1 spell power. So this is the new Syndra. You want to stack it, you want to build a blue buff and a death cap on it, and it will stack up to become a really strong unit. Next is Jin Zhao, who is a warlord duelist. Jin Zhao sweeps around him, dealing a percent of his attack damage and challenging enemies hit for 4 seconds. While an enemy is challenged, Jin Zhao deals increased basic attack damage to them and takes 50% reduced damage from all sources. Next is Yumi. This is the last 3 cost. She's a spirit mystic. Yumi dashes next to a low health ally, healing them for a percent of their missing health and granting them attack speed for 5 seconds. She then repeats this for the first ally. So for the 4 costs, we got Aatrox, who's a cultist Vanguard. After a brief delay, Aatrox pulls in the farthest enemy, then slams the ground, dealing magic damage to all adjacent enemies. Next is Ahri. She's no longer a 2 cost, she's now a 4 cost, a spirit mage. Ahri channels, summoning a large ball of spirit energy, kind of like Goku from Dragon Ball Z. After 1.5 seconds, she lobs it at her target, dealing magic damage to all enemies within 2 hexes. Next is Ashe, who's an Elderwood hunter. Ashe gains attack speed for 5 seconds, and her basic attack fires a flurry of arrows, dealing physical damage. Next is Cassiopeia, who's a Dusk Mystic Dazzler, so this is a triple trait. She's got her Petrifying Gaze. Cassiopeia releases a cone of magic energy towards her target, dealing magic damage to all enemies' heads, stunning them for a few seconds and causing them to take 10% increased damage while stunned. Next is Jin, who is a cultist Sharpshooter. Passive Jin converts each 1% of attack speed he has into 0.8 attack damage. Every 4th shot, Jin deals bonus damage. This is the same Jin. He's now a cultist Sharpshooter. Next is Morgana, who's an Enlightened Dazzler. Tormented Shadow, Morgana hollows the ground beneath her target, dealing magic damage to enemies within over 5 seconds and reducing their magic resist by 40% as long as they are inside it. Morgana restores 20% of the damage dealt. Next is Riven, who's a Dusk Keeper. Riven dashes and shields herself, then slashes forward. So this is the same Riven, just dash, 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 and do a lot of damage. Next is Sejuani, who's a Fortune Vanguard. Sejuani sets off a giant firecracker. After a short delay, enemies caught within are dealt magic damage and stunned for a few seconds. Like I said, a lot of stuns, a lot of CC. So be ready for that. The next one is Shen, who's now a forecast, who's a ninja, adept, and mystic, so all good traits. Shen dashes past his target, shielding himself against damage and taunting all adjacent enemies for 3 seconds. So this is a cool new frontliner. The next one is Talon, who is an enlightened assassin. Talon stabs his target, striking them for a percent of his attack damage. If it kills them, Talon becomes unstoppable, untargetable, and invulnerable, while he leaps to the enemy who's done the most damage this round and refunds his mana. So this is a really, very, very strong unit. Next is Warwick, who's a divine brawler hunter. Warwick gains attack speed, lifesteal, and moves faster for the rest of combat, while in this state, if Warwick scores a takedown, he howls, fearing all adjacent enemies for a few seconds. And finally, we got our 5 costs, which are Azir, who is a Warlord Keeper Emperor. Azir charges forward with a wall of soldiers, knocking back enemies' hit and dealing magic damage. After their charge, the wall of soldiers remain in place in front of Azir for 3 seconds as impassable terrain. Any spearmen from the general trait will accompany Azir for the charge and position themselves to protect him afterwards. So this sounds complicated, but basically you got a wall of soldiers, push the enemy away, they cannot come back, they have to turn around, and those soldiers protect you and fight for you. Next unit is Ezreal, is a 5 cost, is an Elderwood Dazzler, and Ezreal fires a barrage toward the enemy with the highest attack speed, healing allies it passes through and granting them a 50% attack speed for 5 seconds, while dealing magic damage to the enemies and slowing their attack speed by 50% for 5 seconds. Next is Kayn, who's a Tormented Shade. Kayn dashes toward his target, then slashes all adjacent enemies, so it's a basic Q, dealing magic damage and increasing the cost of their next spell by 33%. If the slash hits exactly one target, Kayn immediately casts again. As Rust, Reaping Slash heals Kayn for 50% of the damage it deals. As Shadow Assassin, Reaping Slash deals an extra 60% damage for the first 10 seconds of the combat. Next is Lee Sin, who's got his Gut Fist, he's now a Divine Duelist. Lee Sin punches his target, dealing magic damage, knocking them back to the edge of the battlefield, and stunning them for a few seconds. Any enemies that the target collides with during the knockback are also dead half the damage and stand for 1.5 seconds. If the target is already on the edge of the battlefield, they are removed from combat instead. This is a really new mechanic. You basically remove units from the battlefield. Lilia, who's a Dusk Mage, she's a 5 cost. Lilia costs a magical lullaby, causing waking enemies with the highest current health to fall asleep for 3.5 seconds. Enemies will awaken if they take damage while sleeping, causing an additional magic damage. Next is Set. He's got his Showstopper. Set grabs his target and slams them forward, dealing a percent of his target's maximum health and magic damage to all enemies in a large area. Enemies further from the epicenter take less damage. Next is Yone. This is a really, really cool unit. I'm gonna try this a lot in my next games. He's an Exile Adept. This works really, really well with Yasu. Yone strikes along a path in front of him, dealing magic damage split between all enemies hit and knocking them up for 1.5 seconds. Enemies hit are marked for death, reducing their armor and magic resist by 60%. Yone's spell is then replaced with Unforgotten until there are no remaining enemies marked for death. Unforgotten by 20 mana, so Yone dashes to the lowest health enemy that is marked by death, killing them instantly. Next is the final 5 cost, which is Zilean, Cultist Mystic. Zilean places a protective time rune on the allies with the lowest health. other than himself. When they would die, they instead resurrect after a few seconds, returning to combat and shedding all negative effects. If Zillion is still alive when the target finishes resurrecting, the time rune is not consumed. Okay, next are the new items. Gargoyle's Template is now here. The holder gains 15 armor and 15 magic resist for each enemy targeting them. This works really well with Tam Kench and Warwick. Next is Sunfire Cape, so no more blue red buff. At the start of the combat and every 3 seconds thereafter, a random enemy within 2 hexes is burned for 20% of their maximum health over 6 seconds. Any healing they receive is reduced by 50%. We also have Duelist Heal. The holder gains the Duelist trait. So these are all the new spatula items. So with this one you get Duelist. With this one you get Dusk trait. With this one you get Mage trait. With this one you get Elderwood, Divine trait, Vanguard trait, Warlord trait, and Assassin trait. You should memorize this because we all forget about them. So the reworked items, we got Spear of Shojin. The holder's basic attack restores 5 mana on hit. Red buff is removed and Swordbreaker is removed, so no more of these items. As for the new systems, there are a lot of new stuff. Basically, this is the most important one. It's the chosen mechanic. You will be offered a chosen champion in your store at random with the following bonuses. So a 2-star level champion at 3 times the base cost. One of their trait random counts as 2, and you get plus 200 HP. You get one of these traits, which is 500 HP, 35% spell power, 50 AD, minus 25% mana cost, which are predetermined per character. So yeah, these are all the new features in set 4. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to subscribe. We're almost at 100 subs, which is really cool because I'm just starting YouTube. So yeah, thank you for watching and see you around. Bye.